Everyone, this is Mitchell, here to tell you Mitchell's childhood memories, episode 5. Today I'm really excited because I'm going to talk about two people I love so dearly, my mom and dad, Paul and Beverly Radow. You can see their wedding photo right in front of you. This was 22nd November 1947 in Brooklyn, New York. And the my mom and dad came from what we call in America the greatest generation. They were the generation that were born in the 1920s. Through the childhood, they suffered and endured and survived and lived through the Great Depression, fantastic stories of poverty. And they were the generation that fought the Second World War, won the war, defeated fascism, saved the world from Nazism and from fascism. And they came back and they built up America and made it the great, prosperous nation that it is today. So first I'd like to talk about my mom, Beverly. She was a brilliant student in school when she was a little girl. And as she advanced, she became even more brilliant. I would say she was the smartest in the school. If not that, then she was really up there and close. She was brilliant. In a fair world, she would have gone on to university, get a master's degree, get a PhD, and become a college professor. That's how smart she was, and she could have offered so much to the world. But unfortunately, times weren't fair. She was a woman, and in those days, women just weren't expected to go to university. It was Depression times. She knew her role was to go out and earn money for the family. So as a teenager, she left school and to get a job as a secretary and earn money to help support her family. But this means that she never stopped learning. Mom was always reading and reading and reading and learning and learning and learning and doing cultural events and learning and learning and learning. And I could say by easily, she's the smartest person in my family. In fact, the smartest person that I know of. And just today, I had a conversation with her. She's almost 93 years old, and she was so brilliant and clear in the conversation. And I learned from her every time. My mom was really special mother for me. When I was a little child, she did everything for me. My favorite part was going to bed. She would always tell me bedtime stories. She would read books to me every evening. My favorite was the Secret Gardens, a fantastic story. And every evening she would read me a chapter before I went to bed. Other times she'd read other books. Other times she'd tell me stories of American history about Paul Revere and Nathan Hale. And other times she would tell me about Jewish history. And other times she would tell me about things like the civil rights movement, slavery, segregation, and the hard times faced with black people in America. She was all this time instilling values in me, which I keep to this very, 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 very day. Throughout my life, my mom was my rock. If ever there was a steady person who would give me advice, who was always there for me, it was and continues to be my mom. Next, I'd like to talk to you about my dad, Paul. He graduated Brooklyn Technical High School. His engineer. He wanted to be an engineer, but this was interrupted by the start of the Second World War. So he went into the military, the U.S. military, and he was a pilot in the war. He also worked for Army intelligence. He served his country. At the conclusion of the war, he resumed his education, going to night school, Pratt Institute, if I remember, to complete his engineering degree. He became a fantastic engineer, and he advanced. He did a great job in the Apollo space program, and and later on became a supervisor of a government agency. One thing I want to emphasize about my dad, he was such a super special man. Let's say if he knew 1,000 people, 1,000 out of 1,000 would say about Paul, Paul, you are a mensch, you are a man, you are a human being, you have integrity, you have honesty. It wouldn't be 999, no, it would be 1,000 out of 1,000, because he touched everyone in that same way. My dad never spoke bad about anyone in his entire life. And that's what made him so special, and that's what I learned from him. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about his project at in the space program. Now, the Apollo space rocket going to the moon was more than 300 feet tall. And there was a problem. How do we get the astronauts to get up to the space capsule on top? Well, the only way, obviously, was to make some type of elevator. And that's where my dad came in. But it was a very, very difficult engineering project because you couldn't put a building right next to like a structure like that, right next to the launch pad. So my dad had to make a freestanding elevator to take them to the top. And it was it was trouble making that elevator. And finally, the project was given to Otis Elevator, and my dad was on the team that drew up the plans. In fact, my dad actually made the drawings, made the plans to get the astronauts up, and obviously it worked because the astronauts got to the moon many, many times. So my dad's elevator engineering worked out fine. In fact, after my dad died 5 years ago, the family found those very same plans he had hidden away, and we presented them to those engineering plans to Kennesaw State College in the state of Georgia. And if you go to their engineering school, in the lobby, they have all the drawings and the whole story of how my dad and his team made that particular elevator. There was a ceremony at Kennesaw State College, and one of the big shots in the engineering department asked the students a question: could any of you make that drawing? And they all said, no, it's impossible, because they're on the age of computers. They couldn't do freehand what my dad did. That's a lost art. So my dad did something special that no one could do in the past, and I think no one can do in the future. My dad later went on to, as I said, supervisor for a government program, and this program was involved with keeping jobs in America. American companies which were hurt by foreign imports and were about to go under. My dad helped them to succeed, and he had a whole department. And he kept his workers. He was the best manager ever. He kept the workers motivated. He kept them happy. He kept them inspired. He gave them credit. He treated them as human beings. He listened to them. He was absolutely a fantastic supervisor. And after he retired, my younger brother Norman became a businessman, and he went to my dad for advice. And my dad gave him this advice: Norman, take care of your workers. Remember, your workers are assets. Your workers are not liability. Take care of your workers. Norman has never forgotten that, and he runs his company Ratco in just that manner, just that very, very manner, and that's why it's so successful. Well, as you can see from these stories, I was so blessed to be supported by Paul and Beverly Radow. They were amazing parents. They instilled incredible values with me, and maybe at times I've been crazy and forgotten those values, but they always come back to me because the roots of those values were planted on me forever. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the story.